The room was packed, but no one was breathing. Cameras clicked. Pens hovered. Eyes darted nervously between committee members. At the center of it all sat Reptors Jasmine Crockett. Stone still, spine straight, gaze locked forward like a blade. The chair tapped the gavel once. "Representative Crockett, you have the floor." She didn't blink. She reached into her folder. Silence deepened. Not just quiet, but a silence that waited. Then, with calm clarity, she said it. "I'd like to enter into the record a series of transactions linking former President Trump's children to unregistered offshore accounts, beginning with the one tied to a Dubai shell company dated just after his inauguration." A gasp. Audible. Real. Not from her. Not from her peers. From the moment, because that name his children was the red line no one crossed. Behind the scenes, Trump was watching. Advisors said his face flushed crimson. He slammed his hand against the desk, cursing loud enough to rattle the doors of Mar-a-Lago. What the hell did she just say? Jasmine flipped to the next tab. No tremor in her voice. No apology. Just deliberate words that landed like hammers on marble. Further investigation suggests these accounts may have been shielded under charitable fronts. But we all know, Mr. Chair, that in this town charity is often just a smokescreen for greed. Boom. The Republican side of the aisle squirmed. Some looked at the exits. Others stared daggers. But she didn't even acknowledge them, because this moment wasn't about them. It wasn't about Congress, it was about truth. And what happens when someone finally says it out loud? Cameras zoomed in. Social media lit up in real time. Commentators scrambled to find their words. Did she just... She named them. She named the kids. This was the line nobody crossed. Until now. Jasmine Crockett had just pulled the first thread, and the whole fabric was about to come undone. But what she revealed next, that was the moment America realized this wasn't just politics. This was personal. And that was just the beginning. Long before the gavel dropped, the tension had already started to thrum. Outside the chamber, protesters clashed chants of "Justice now!" rising against the rhythmic beat of counter-shouts. Inside, the hearing room simmered. The agenda read dryly, "Committee on Government Oversight." But everyone knew that wasn't what this was about. Immigration, corruption, justice reform. Words, tossed around like poker chips, but no one ready to call the bluff. Except her. Rep. Jasmine Crockett wasn't supposed to lead the charge. In fact, she wasn't supposed to make much noise at all. That was the design. Let her speak, let her simmer, let her fade. But Jasmine had read the room. And she didn't come to simmer. She came to burn. They had laughed behind closed doors, called her too new, too loud, too ambitious. A freshman from Texas with a sharp tongue and a sharper mind, dangerous in the wrong hands, disposable in theirs. They didn't see the setup, while they postured and peacocked, interrupting witnesses. And throwing cheap slogans across the table, Jasmine listened. She studied. She collected names, numbers, patterns. And she waited, because this wasn't just about Donald Trump. It was about what he symbolized: power without scrutiny, arrogance without consequence, wealth wrapped in victimhood. The hearing had already turned. Chaotic Republicans shouting over Democrats, chairs threatening order, microphones cutting in and out, theatrics designed to smother truth beneath the noise. Then Jasmine leaned in, and just before she spoke, something strange happened. The buzz began. On Twitter. Hearing rumors. Jasmine Crockett has something major. Stay tuned. On TikTok. If she says what I think she's gonna say. In Discord servers and group chats. She's about to flip the table. And then she did. Because Jasmine understood something that few in that room did. It's not enough to expose corruption. You have to name it. You have to name them. That's why her words didn't just stir headlines, they punched holes in the wall. She spoke not just of policies, but of people, not just of power, but the families guarded by power, the ones tucked behind private jets and legal teams who had never been questioned. Until now, and the risk, tangible. She could be censured. She could lose committee positions. The smear campaigns would be brutal. The threats, personal. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't looking for safety. She was looking for justice. And for her, silence was never an option. So when she said those names, when she pulled open that folder, she wasn't making a political move. She was firing a shot across the bow of generational entitlement. She wasn't just going after Trump. She was going after the idea that truth bows to legacy, that money rewrites reality, that audacity is a substitute for integrity. And the moment she did, everything changed because the story stopped being about what Trump did. It became a question of what comes next, but no one expected her to bring up that Donald. Trump didn't build a presidency, he built a brand. Gold letters, red ties, marble lobbies. A name that gleamed across skyscrapers like a crown. He wasn't just a man, he was an illusion. And the illusion was simple. Success without scrutiny. Dominance without doubt. For decades, the Trump mystique thrived on flash and friction. Tabloid drama turned into magazine covers. Bankruptcy filings were rebranded as strategic genius. The empire teetered, then rose again, not on profits but on performance. But behind the curtain, the numbers told a different story. Tax records, once sealed and mythologized, revealed a financial labyrinth. Hundreds of LLCs, shell companies stacked like Russian dolls, losses leveraged, loans unexplained. One year, Trump paid just $750 in federal income tax. Another year, nothing at all. And then came the pattern. These weren't just business maneuvers. They were family maneuvers. The Trump Organization wasn't a corporation. It was a clan fortress. Everything revolved around blood, loyalty, and leverage. Ivanka Trump, polished, presentable, perfectly poised, was quietly drawing consulting fees from companies she also helped manage, avoiding tax trails. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law turned senior advisor, secured a $2 billion investment from a Saudi fund shortly after leaving the White House, despite glaring objections from ethics panels. Don Jr. and Eric, less refined, more brazen, carried out the ground game. Real estate deals, international branding schemes, and whisper networks of influence. They weren't just Trump's children. They were the heirs and agents of the brand. And then the White House. When Trump took office, the line between presidency and profit evaporated. Foreign dignitaries stayed in Trump hotels. Business licenses exploded overseas. The Trump International Hotel in D.C. became a lobbyist bottleneck, where access was currency and policy was poker. Jared led negotiations in the Middle East while retaining control of his family's real estate empire. Ivanka secured Chinese trademarks while sitting in on presidential meetings. Every handshake, every photo op, potential leverage. This wasn't public service. It was dynastic choreography, and Trump, at the center, ran it like a mob boss CEO. Calculated, vengeful, laser-focused on who was loyal and who dared to cross him. Staffers were discarded like paper cups. Allies were turned into enemies overnight, but his children, untouchable. They weren't just his legacy, they were his shield, his sacred ground. Because in Trump's world, loyalty wasn't earned through principle, it was purchased through silence. And few dared to question it, even fewer dared to name names, until now, because Jasmine Crockett didn't just go after the president. She spoke the names he refused to hear in public. She pierced the veil around the family myth, the idea that they were somehow above reproach, beyond the reach of subpoenas, untouchable by facts. And that's why he exploded, because Jasmine didn't just expose corruption. She exposed the fear behind the curtain, that the brand could crack, that the empire could rust, that the name could be stained. And once that happened, the illusion, the legacy, the dynasty could collapse. So when she said it, when she dropped that name with calm precision, she didn't just light a match. She stepped into the vault where the truth was buried, and Trump knew it. This wasn't political anymore. This was personal. And for a man who has survived scandals, lawsuits, bankruptcies, and impeachments, there was still one rule left: don't touch the family. So when Jasmine mentioned that name, she crossed the one red line. Before she ever held a mic in Congress, Jasmine Crockett held the hands of mothers waiting on verdicts that could change everything. She was raised in the heat of Texas, not the polished suburbs, but the places where dreams fight through concrete. Her mother worked long shifts. Her father wore his pride in his silence. The lessons were simple: show up, speak truth, protect your people. She carried those lessons into law, not corporate law, not the kind that pads bank accounts. Jasmine chose the front lines: criminal defense. She walked into jails where the doors echoed too loud, into courtrooms where her clients' names were whispered like lost causes. They told her to be polite. She chose to be precise. Grainy footage shows her in a crowded county courtroom, voice steady, as she cross-examines a cop who'd blurred the truth too many times. Her tone never cracked. Her eyes never blinked. "I'm not asking for your opinion, officer. I'm asking for your evidence." That was Jasmine Crockett, not loud for the sake of volume, but unflinching because someone had to be. She fought. For the wrongly accused, for those who couldn't afford bail, for communities over-policed and underprotected. And she didn't just fight, she won, but her victories came with scars. Threats slipped under her office door, judges who rolled their eyes, opposing counsel who mistook her fire for foolishness. They didn't understand her fire wasn't born of ambition. It was born of necessity, because when the system is tilted, politeness doesn't move it. Pressure does. Her leap into politics wasn't planned. It was provoked. When police violence surged, when rights were trampled in broad daylight, she looked around and realized the courtroom wasn't enough, so she ran. No big donors, no establishment nods, just a message: I don't fear power, I hold it accountable. Her campaign was built on shoe leather and urgency. She knocked doors until her voice went hoarse. She debated opponents who smirked until they stumbled. And when the votes came in, it wasn't even close. She became a Texas state legislator. Then, in a moment of national turbulence, she aimed higher and earned her seat in Congress. Not as a celebrity, not as a pawn, but as a truth-teller. The kind of leader who doesn't need a spotlight, but commands one anyway. Her arrival in Washington was met with the usual choreography: handshakes, platitudes, unspoken hierarchies. She ignored it all. Instead, she walked the halls with the same conviction she carried in court. She read the bills line by line. She called out hypocrisy even when the cameras weren't rolling. And when they were, she made every second count. There's footage of her in committee hearings, unbothered by raised voices, calmly dismantling arguments with receipts and resolve. You don't get to rewrite facts because they make you uncomfortable, she once told a colleague mid-interruption. She didn't flinch then. She's never flinched, because she's carried the weight of real people's lives. She's heard the despair in jail calls at midnight. She's watched young boys shackled for things they didn't do. She sat with grieving families who never got justice. So when threats came her way in D.C., veiled warnings, online smears, political shade, she just smiled. Because they were late. She'd already survived much worse. In a rare quiet moment captured off-air, a reporter asked if she worried about the consequences of calling out people like Trump. The backlash, the labels, the noise. Jasmine looked away for a second, her voice lower but firm. I knew speaking out might cost me, but silence costs more. That's the code she lives by. She doesn't move with fear. She moves with purpose. So when the day came, the hearing, the folder, the name, she wasn't improvising. She was ready. Not just with facts, but with fire. Because Jasmine Crockett doesn't wait for permission. She doesn't ask how high she's allowed to go. She goes as high as truth demands. That's what shook the room. Not just what she said, but who was saying it. A black woman from Texas. A daughter of working-class grit. A former defense attorney who made it to the Hill not by playing their game, but by refusing to. She's not polished. She's powerful. And she's not here to be liked. She's here to make sure justice is no longer optional. So when she sat behind that mic, opened that folder, and spoke those names, she wasn't chasing headlines. She was delivering warnings. To the old guard, to the mythmakers, to the untouchables. And that day, she brought all her fire with her. The air had shifted. You could feel it. Something electric, on the edge of combustion. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just asking questions anymore. She was circling the fire. Across the aisle, Trump allies began to stir. Rep. Halverson from Florida leaned forward, smirking. "Point of order, Mr. Chair." The gentlewoman from Texas is engaging in character assassination. The chair, visibly uncomfortable, tapped the mic. "Let's keep this civil." But Jasmine didn't even glance up. Her eyes were fixed on the witness. "Can you confirm whether the LLC listed here, T Holdings International, received a payment within 48 hours of the White House announcement on sanctions relief?" The witness squirmed. Papers shuffled. The room held its breath. And that's when Rep. Collins from Georgia barked across the table, voice raised like a warning shot. "This is a witch hunt. You're dragging the president's family into this. For political points." Jasmine didn't blink. "I'm dragging facts into daylight," she replied, her tone measured, her posture unshaken. "If the president's family happens to be standing in the shadows, well, that's on them." The room rippled. Murmurs. Camera shutters. Staffers turning to whisper behind their tablets. And somewhere, a phone buzzed. Inside Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump was watching. He had been fuming since the folder appeared. But now, as his children's names were being flirted with in real time, he snapped, Truth Social lit up with his fury. "Radical left Democrat Jasmine Crockett attacks my family on live TV. This is unprecedented and disgusting." The post hit. Screens instantly. Reporters in the back of the hearing room gasped. Phones were raised. Tweets were fired off. The coverage shifted in real time. But Jasmine never broke eye contact with the witness, even as Rep. Collins slammed his papers onto the desk. Even as the chair leaned in, muttering, "Representative Crockett, maybe we can redirect this line of inquiry." She turned to him slowly, her voice still low, her tone still surgical. "With respect, Mr. Chair, I'm not here to protect feelings. I'm here to protect the American people." Silence. Even the interruptions stopped, just for a beat, because they could all feel it. This wasn't grandstanding. This wasn't theater. This was strategy. She wasn't raising her voice because she didn't need to. She wasn't shaking because she had nothing to hide. She was drawing a map made of paper trails, receipts, and patterns no one had dared to thread together, and she was almost at the name that shifted the ground, the one that had never been said out loud, not here, not like this. In the gallery, you could see it on their faces. Law students, activists, veterans, ordinary people who had lined up at dawn to watch history. They weren't just watching a hearing. They were watching a woman stand against the machinery and win. Every attack thrown her way absorbed and deflected. Every shout answered with steel. And now, the temperature dropped again because she was nearing the crescendo. One more page turned. One more breath taken. And then came the name that made jaws drop. The folder was nearly empty now. All but one tab remained. A slim divider, deep red against the crisp white pages. Jasmine Crockett slid her fingers beneath it like she already knew what was coming, and maybe she did. The room held still. Phones hovered mid-air. Even the witnesses stared. She flipped the final tab open. "This," she began, her voice sharp but unhurried, "is a document from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network dated September 17, 2020. It outlines a wire transfer of $4.3 million, routed through two Delaware-registered LLCs, and ending in an account linked to an entity controlled by Ms. Ivanka Trump." A pause. Then, murmurs, gasps, audible disbelief leaking into the chamber like a draft. She kept going. That same entity, Manara Global Ventures, was used as a pass-through for at least 5 separate foreign transactions originating in jurisdictions flagged for high money laundering risk. We're talking Dubai, Macau, Panama. And every time there's a common signature, someone named as consultant for advisory services. Yet no services are documented. A hand shot up from the Republican side. Representatives Doyle, eyes wild, stood abruptly. "Point of order. The gentlewoman is making defamatory—" She didn't even look up. "Yielding no time to fiction," she said, almost smiling. "Only facts." And just like that, she turned the page. This next record is a 2021 IRS review noting $750,000 in deductions claimed under a Trump-affiliated foundation, allegedly for overseas humanitarian work. But there's no evidence of such work. Instead, the funds were used for what's labeled as event security during a private wedding at Mar-a-Lago. The audience tensed. The hearing room was no longer just a hearing room. It was a courtroom, a newsroom, a stage, and Jasmine Crockett was controlling all of it with nothing but a folder and a tone of practiced resolve. A beat later, Representative Doyle fired again. "You're implying criminal activity without evidence. This is outrageous." Jasmine finally looked up. Calm. Surgical. "I'm not implying anything. I'm reading what your party's accountants failed to bury." Silence. "You want to defend this? Be my guest. Just make sure you bring better math." The clip would be replayed 1,000,000 times within 24 hours. Somewhere in Florida, Trump watched the live stream turn into an inferno. He didn't ask what was said. He screamed it. "Get her off that mic. Sue her. I want her barred from the committee." He called 2 aides, then his lawyer, then his media handler. "Spin it. Now." But it was too late, because Jasmine had just done what few dared. She laid bare the blueprint, transaction after transaction, name after name. Each slide of paper another domino falling toward the truth. She didn't yell. She didn't posture. She simply unfolded the story one breadcrumb at a time, until there was no denying the trail. She exposed a pattern of wealth shielding itself with patriotism. A pattern of power laundering morality until it looked clean, and she brought receipts. In 2018, she continued, flipping pages with quiet finality, a deal was struck between a Kushner-owned firm and a sovereign wealth fund based in the UAE. That deal was masked through a Nevada trust, and the only reason we know about it now is because of a whistleblower who couldn't stomach the silence. The chair shifted awkwardly. Even some Democrats seemed stunned by the sheer depth of it, but Jasmine, unmoved. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about optics. This is about the American people having the right to know who's been trading access for inheritance, who's been turning public office into private revenue, who's been pretending to serve while quietly siphoning. And then she delivered the line that would echo across every social feed in America. "If transparency's a witch hunt, maybe someone's scared of the truth." The room froze. Even Doyle sat down, because in that moment everyone knew this wasn't speculation. This was exposure. The truth wasn't a grenade. It was a mirror, and Jasmine Crockett had just held it up to the face of a dynasty across the country. The clip exploded. TikToks with stitched reactions. Twitter threads breaking down every company she named. Reddit boards scrambling to cross-reference old leaks. Crockett receipts trended within the hour. Late-night shows aired side-by-side breakdowns. Even cable news couldn't look away. The narrative had changed. The myth of untouchability had cracked. Commentators called it a once-in-a-generation political moment. One anchor said, "She didn't just speak truth to power, she made power flinch." And in the middle of it all, Jasmine said nothing more. She closed the folder, leaned back in her chair, and waited, because she didn't need the last word. The truth had already spoken, but the aftermath made it even bigger. The moment the hearing ended, the flood began. Clips of Jasmine Crockett's takedown raced across the internet like sparks on dry grass. In under 20 minutes, Jasmine dropped receipts was the #1 trend on Twitter, not just in D.C., not just in Texas, worldwide. Someone clipped her quote, "If transparency's a witch hunt, maybe someone's scared of the truth," over a remix beat. It hit 1.2 million views before dinner. TikTok exploded. Users recreated the scene in split-screen dramatizations. Gen Z law students lip-synced her lines in courtroom cosplay. Black women across the country stitched their reactions, nodding, shouting, crying. "This is how you stand up to power." MSNBC ran the clip on loop. Fox News scrambled to reframe. It unhinged leftist attacks Trump family with wild conspiracy. But even they played the footage, because the numbers were undeniable. CNN hosted a panel titled "Crockett versus Corruption: A Turning Point?" The New York Times published a late-night editorial, "What Courage in Congress Looks Like." And the celebrities, they didn't wait. Kerry Washington tweeted, "This is what leadership looks like." John Legend, "Jasmine Crockett just changed the game." Ava DuVernay posted a still of Jasmine behind the mic with a one-word caption, "Icon." Even non-political influencers jumped in. Twitch streamers, pop culture bloggers, fashion designers all reposting, all reacting. A fan-made graphic emerged within hours. Jasmine Crockett, bathed in light, folder in hand, with the tagline, "Truth doesn't tremble." It went viral instantly. The impact wasn't just digital. Capitol Hill was buzzing. Staffers whispered in elevators. Lawmakers who'd dismissed her were suddenly rewatching the footage behind closed doors. The power structure had felt something shift. And Trump? He was livid. His legal team issued a vague, furious statement by midnight. The Congresswoman's statements today were reckless, defamatory, and legally actionable. "We are exploring all available remedies." Jasmine retweeted it with 3 words, "See you in court." And the internet roared, memes poured in. One showed her holding the Uno reverse card. Another dubbed her the receipt whisperer. A Change.org petition circulated, "Draft Jasmine Crockett for president." It hit 200,000 signatures overnight. More importantly, something deeper began to stir. Think pieces emerged. Have we entered a new era of political courage? Did Jasmine Crockett just break the code? She didn't go viral by accident. She went viral on principle. People weren't just watching. They were feeling seen. Young organizers said they'd never felt more energized. Teachers played the clip in civics classes. Parents sat their daughters down to explain what just happened and why it mattered, because this wasn't just about Trump. This was about who gets to speak truth, and who gets silenced when they try. Jasmine Crockett wasn't polished like a pundit. She wasn't bred for backroom deals. She wasn't part of the old machine. She was something else, real, unbothered, prepared. She didn't shout to be heard. She spoke to be remembered, and it worked. One tweet summed it up best. She didn't just bring the receipts. She made everyone stop pretending there was no fire. And as the coverage swelled, as the comments flooded in, as the networks dissected every frame, Jasmine stayed quiet. Until the next morning. She walked into the rotunda, head high, folder in hand. Cameras followed her every step. A reporter shouted, "Congresswoman Crockett, any regrets about yesterday's hearing?" She stopped, turned, smiled, and then came her most powerful quote yet. The podium was simple. No flashing lights, No campaign banners. Just a mic, a seal, and a woman who knew exactly what she came to say. Jasmine Crockett stood there calm, composed, unapologetic. She had just set the political world on fire. But you wouldn't know it by the way she carried herself. No victory dance. No bravado. Just the quiet strength of someone who told the truth and let it land where it needed to. Her voice was steady. I didn't speak yesterday to be provocative. I spoke because silence protects the powerful. And I don't work for the powerful, I work for the people. A pause. She looked out at the cameras, at the sea of press who had come expecting either an apology or a retreat. They got neither. This moment isn't about me. It's about every woman who's ever been told to wait her turn. Every black girl who's been told she's too loud when she's only being heard. Every truth-teller who's been warned that the truth is too much, she continued, eyes locked forward. I didn't come to Congress to be liked. I came to lead. And that means asking questions no one wants answered, naming names no one wants, said, and standing my ground when the room tries to shake me. No stammer, no hesitation, just certainty, the kind that doesn't need approval to exist. We don't come to play. We come to lead. And we don't apologize for truth. And, just like that, she stepped back from the mic. No sound bites, no spin, just a line that would echo in classrooms and courtrooms, barbershops and boardrooms, for a long time to come. Because Jasmine Crockett had done something that so few in her position ever do. She showed what it looks like when service beats spectacle, when transparency beats theatrics, when dignity beats dynasty. In a world where Trump had built an empire on deflection, noise, and inherited power, Jasmine offered a different blueprint, one rooted in clarity, accountability, and earned voice. His legacy was built in gold leaf and NDAs. Hers was being written in truth and courage. And people saw it, felt it, believed in it, because, for once, someone didn't flinch. The final narration began as images of the hearing replayed the folder, the quotes, the silence that followed. When arrogance meets courage. History listens, because this was never just about one man. It was about a system that rewards the loudest voice in the room until someone smarter, braver, and sharper walks in and speaks with purpose. It was about reminding America who the government is supposed to serve. And it was about showing that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one yelling. It's the one telling the truth and not backing down when it echoes. This wasn't the end of the story, not even close. Because Crockett hadn't just spoken. She had opened a door. And behind that door there were more names, more questions, more people ready to ask them. And this might only be the beginning. She didn't shout. She didn't beg for respect. She didn't flinch when the room tried to silence her. Jasmine Crockett stood firm not just for herself, but for every person who's ever been told to sit down, back off, or stay quiet. And in that moment, she showed us something we too often forget. Silence isn't safety. It's surrender. So if this video lit something in you, don't let it fade. Don't let this be another moment that scrolls by and disappears. Let it be the spark. Let it be the reminder that truth isn't something we wait for. It's something we speak, share, and defend. Share this story. Drop a comment. Tell us where you draw your line. Subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the idea that dignity still matters, that leadership isn't inherited, that courage can be contagious, because when enough people speak up, even the biggest bullies can't hide. You're not just watching history. You're part of it. And the next time someone says truth doesn't matter, show them this moment. Show them what happens when someone walks into the lion's den and doesn't blink, because this isn't just Jasmine's story. This is your moment too. Final title screen fades in over a swelling score. Truth doesn't tremble. Courage doesn't blink. And this isn't over.